For this bonding exercise, this little card just has the In-Ovation L brackets set up. And on the top today, I'm going to use canine to canine, and on the bottom, I'll show premolar to premolar. Now we've positioned some of the brackets already. I'll show you positioning of the final few. You just want to make sure when you're loading the bracket in the holder that you can deliver it to the patient without having the lips get in the way. So this is a really nice way with this bracket positioner, if you have it held like this, with the door kind of pointed upward on the positioner, then you can go to the mouth and be able to deliver that bracket to the lateral incisor without having things be in the way. And you can just fully seat that bracket and clean up any flash that you'd have with the perio probe. And do your measurements. I'll flip it around just to make it easier for you guys to visualize the placement of the brackets for this next part. So again, press the bracket again, clean any flash around any of the brackets that you might have. And then as we're going for positioning, the further gingivally you go with that bracket, the more gingivally that bracket is going to be. So if you put a straight wire through there, it's going to move that canine facially. So you want to make sure you stay above that cingulum. And typically, a good measurement range for this is anywhere, if you measure from the gingival portion of the slot up to the cusp tip, anywhere from 4 to 6 millimeters, depending on the anatomy of the tooth, is a good place to start. For this one, I'll kind of show you about a 5 millimeter position. And then on the lateral incisor, I'm going to do 4.5 millimeters. And you can control your tipping. You can control your tipping by either moving the bracket this way or that, depending on how you want that lateral incisal embrasure to be. And then, so we're going 5 millimeters, 4.5 millimeters. Again, we're going to that gingival portion of the slot. And then 5 millimeters for the central incisor. Five millimeters for the other central incisor. 4.5 millimeters for the lateral incisor. And then for the last canine, we'll go back to 5. But again, you could use 6 millimeters depending on the patient's bite relationship. For the canine, 6 millimeters, 5.5, 6 millimeters. Or you could use, if the cingulum's higher on the canine, you could use 4 millimeters, 3.5 millimeters, 4 millimeters. So it just varies by the anatomy of each individual's patient's mouth. So that's positioning for the maxillary arch. For the mandibular arch, I'll just put the final few brackets on. Again, making sure that we load these in a way that you can actually deliver it to the mouth. So holding it like this tends to, again, work the best for me. So I can bring that in without having any interference with the lips or anything else from the other anatomy. And these premolar brackets, really you just want to be able to get it anywhere on the tooth. The crown, the clinical crown on the lingual surface of these premolars is pretty small. And you'll notice we just had too much crowding for us to be able to actually fit the bracket on this tooth. So we'll use a coil in this case to open up that space initially. And as I'm doing the measurement here on the premolar, essentially all I want is it to be pretty in line with the rest of the posterior plane of occlusion, just for patient comfort so you don't have the wire hanging out way down or way up high. And then typically I'll use kind of a tip on that canine that allows it to transition seamlessly from the lateral incisor to the canine without having too much of a vertical discrepancy on that premolar. For the lower teeth, I'm going to use a pretty similar range, 4 millimeters to 5.5 millimeters on this canine. So for this one, we'll use a 5 millimeter measurement. Again, from the gingival part of the slot to the cusp tip, just so I'm using the same reference each time. And then for all the anterior teeth, you can use anywhere from a 0.5 millimeter to a full millimeter step down. So if this is a 5 millimeter, you can go 4 to 4.5 millimeter. And I'll usually make the determination based on if I'm trying to correct an overbite or if I want the incisors to be up a little bit higher. If we have a really high prominent cusp tip, I might go 4.5 millimeters instead of 4. For this exercise, I'll use 4.5 as my measurement. So 4.5 millimeters. And then back to 5 for the canine. And again, I'm just looking for the canine tip to kind of seamlessly transition from the lateral to that premolar. And again, just with that angulation, I'm going for that wire. If you think about where it's coming out, I just don't want it to be pointing down too much into the gingival tissue or incisally. So just getting it parallel to that occlusal plane.